equity, mate.
I will say this about investing. Everything you do learn is cumulative. What I learned at 20 is useful.
Welcome to another episode of Equity Mates, a podcast that follows our journey of investing. Whether you're an absolute beginner or approaching Warren Buffett status, our aim is to help break down your barriers from beginning to dividend. My name is Bryce, and as always, I'm joined by my equity buddy, Ren. How are you going?
I'm very good, Bryce. Very excited for this episode. We're continuing our CEO series.
Yep.
We're speaking to some of the best CEOs in Australia and around the world. And this one I'm particularly excited for because I've been a shareholder for a while.
You have been. I remember chatting about this company back when we were at university on the balcony, and looking forward to unpacking this one. We're joined in the studio by Phil McKenzie. Phil, welcome.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here. Thanks very much.
So Phil is the CEO and Managing Director of Pacific Smiles Group. The ASX ticker is PSQ. They are an Australian dental group operating over 100 dental centres under the Pacific Smile Dental Care and the NIB Dental Care brands, located throughout New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland and the ACT. Prior to joining Pacific Smiles in 2018, Phil was the driver of Apple's retail entry into Australia as Apple's Australian market director. And we just found out offline that you were the first retail employee for Apple here in Australia. So did pretty well in that job interview, I assume. And after that, you were the CEO of Widex and Audiology Management Group. So pretty extensive resume, a lot of experience. And we're going to unpack your journey as CEO at Pacific Smiles.
Excellent. I look forward to it.
I'm glad Bryce got Pacific Smiles out. It sounded like a bit of a tongue twister there for a second. So Phil, we always like to start these CEO interviews by hearing the company leader describe their company in their own words. So to kick us off today, can you tell us how you see Pacific Smiles?
Yeah, absolutely. Pacific Smiles Group is a dentist service organisation, distinctly different from being a dental service organisation. We've set about identifying that the dentist is our primary customer, the person that we're seeking to service, the professional that we're seeking to enable. And so essentially we've established over 108 dental centres on the eastern seaboard and a few under managed service relationship with HBF in the west. And we exist to provide services and facilities to the dentists that choose to put their practice with us.
I frequent the NIB Dental Care here in Sydney twice a year. Thank you to NIB. Zero cost with the health fund. But PSQ was founded in 2002, going public in 2014. For those that haven't heard of the company before, are you able to tell us a little bit about the journey to date?
Yeah, absolutely. So the founding story was essentially a collection of dentists who thought there has to be a better way to take care of the administration and so-called ancillary components outside of their professional practice. So they clubbed together and over the fullness of time created the Pacific Smiles Group. Quite a journey to get there, but essentially it could be best described as a dentist could turn up on their motorcycle outside of Pacific Smiles in a t-shirt and a pair of jeans. We will provide them with scrubs, gloves, a mask, a patient, a dental surgery, a dental assistant, consumables, a billing system, a patient management system, and essentially they take care of everything inside the mouth and we take care of the rest.
Oh, interesting. As he says with a big bright smile.
Yeah. You'd have to have good teeth as the CEO of Pacific Smiles.
You do?
So it's an interesting model. And is it a model that many other people are doing, or is this something that's quite unique for Pacific Smiles?
I think there's a number of very well-placed DSOs or dental service organisations that we can look to in the US, and there's certainly a couple here in Australia. Our unique aspect for Pacific Smiles is that we do it predominantly greenfield rollouts. So we've rolled out the centres versus acquiring them. We have a differentiator in terms of we're the largest commonly branded, so Pacific Smiles Dental branded group, and we typically go inside shopping centres. So we're not on the strip location next to the tax agent behind, the laundromat next to the Chinese takeaway. We're inside a shopping centre with proximity to Coles and Woolies, and that's what we see as a real differentiator for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I was working for Coles in Melbourne, the flagship store next to the head office, a Pacific Smiles opened up there, and I was like, that's great. I'm a shareholder there. I'm a shareholder of the Coles. I'm slowly taking over this shopping centre. So you took over as CEO in 2018. The business had been public for 4 years, running for 16 years. What was sort of the business you inherited, and what were some of the key focuses for you as you took on the CEO role?
Yeah, it's a real privilege to hold the role of Chief Executive for Pacific Smiles. The base of the business was absolutely superb. So my criteria for joining was something that I absolutely believed in. So healthcare and doing something that makes a difference, absolutely. And then the potential of the business. So I had the opportunity to come across from the US where I was living at the time and assess the business, travel the dental centres and look at the baseline of a rollout model and fell in love. Absolutely believed in it. So the team that was assembled had done an excellent job to grow it from a founder-led business through into a listed entity. And my job was essentially to come in and, dare I say it, maybe Colin Chapman said it best, but to simplify and add lightness. So whatever we could do to make sure that we were very clear about our value propositions to customers, being the dentist, staff, being the team members of Pacific Smiles, and the patients, those consumers that choose to put their care with us. And so that's what we've set about doing.
Yeah, nice. Well, if you look at Bryce's teeth, you're obviously doing it well.
Not sure about that. So for the audience of retail investors that we have who might not know much about the dental industry, how should we, I guess, conceptualize the industry? Who are the main players here in Australia? If you're wanting to... You think there's a good macro trend here of people wanting more dental services. How should we think about that landscape?
Yeah, well, for every potential patient that do and don't have teeth, would you believe, they're a potential patient for Pacific Smiles. In Australia, there's about 17,500 practicing dentist professionals, and so we're seeking to service as many of those as we can. Today, Pacific Smiles probably has 2.5% market share of a $10 billion industry. So the scope, the trajectory, the ramp is tremendous. So we set about putting centres in the locations where dentists want to be and patients are. Ultimately, the corporatised side, if you want to use that as the vernacular for the aggregated practices, probably wouldn't add up to more than 10% of the market. So it's still very cottage, mom and pop style. The professional graduates, maybe he and a partner, he and his wife, she and her partner, she and her husband, get in and actually establish their own practice.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting. So it is very much like a local dentist industry.
Yeah, I think like many, allied health, ancillary healthcare elements, it is from graduation to own business and on a trajectory. And then if you're lucky, you're required by some type of aggregating roll-up entity. We've gone about it a bit differently. We believe that putting the footprint on the ground and then inviting the dentist to practice from a standardised professional facility is the right way to go.
And then how does the relationship work between the dentist and you guys? Like they've obviously, if they're doing it all themselves, they retain all earnings and can do what they want with it. But you guys come in and say, we'll do everything. You just need to look after the mouth. How does that relationship work?
Yeah, great question. The dentist contracts our services, would you believe? So they come to us. Often we'll source and advise them of who we are, but they come to us and say, listen, I'd like to practice from one of your rooms, service the patients that you generate. And for that privilege, we do, in gross terms, a 60-40 split. So they pay us 60% of what they generate. They keep 40 net of lab fees. So in essential terms, while they may make perhaps 10% more if they were to set themselves up, they probably get 100% more headache because of the complexity of running it. So we take that hassle away.
Yeah, and then I assume you guys, well, obviously the Pacific Smiles brand is well known. NIB obviously are pushing customers, but then you are also trying to get patients in the door as well.
Absolutely. So we've got both a sophisticated set of digital marketing tools that we use that are probably common across many businesses that you all see in terms of emails and text messages and social media. But would you believe that the analog effort of being inside a shopping centre, having a pop-up booth with a tooth fairy or a giant toothbrush, giving away toothbrushes and inviting people to come in and have a clean and check is actually one of the most effective ways of building a patient base.
Yeah. So the industry, some corporate, a dentist, a lot of mum and pop operations. Obviously, everyone needs dental care. There are probably two big other players in the industry. One is the government. There's a lot of money being pushed into that. I think Victoria now has like a dentist bus where they drive around and give all public school students, dental care. But then the other big one is the health insurers. And, we've mentioned NIB, where you operate the clinics for. HBF over in WA, you've got a relationship with. For people who are new to the industry, can you tell us the role health insurers play and sort of how you think about it as the leader of Pacific Smiles?
Yeah, for sure. I think the relationship with the dentist is fundamental as a service provider, but the quality relationship with the primary payer in the marketplace, which is the health fund, is fundamental. So we obviously in the early days set about a great relationship with NIB, and we now operate 11 NIB branded dental centres. We purchased 3 AHM dental centres off Medibank, and we operate those with a degree of exclusivity to their membership base and services provided therein. And then we were invited by HBF to get involved to open HBF dental branded centres. I see it as absolutely fundamental that the primary payer needs to be considered as vital in the relationship. So we facilitate a relationship as Pacific Smiles with the dentist and the health fund for preferred provider agreements. And ultimately, I would suggest that most health funds have made the decision that they're better insurers than they are service providers. And so looking to so-called professional service providers like us is a natural extension.
It's a funny balance that you're striking, because on one hand, you're right, they're the primary payers, and the health insurers want to push people to their branded clinics. They want Bryce to know that NIB cares about his teeth, and they're pushing him to their clinic. But at the same time, you're trying to build the Pacific Smiles brand. You want dentists and customers to know about Pacific Smiles. How do you balance that, I guess, the own branded clinics and then the white labelled clinics, for want of a better word?
If you go all the way back to our true purpose, which is to improve the oral health of all Australians to world's best, essentially I need our centres and our partner centres to be where the patients are. So the idea of a branded centre or a Pacific Smiles branded centre, we're relatively agnostic on it. We think that the Pacific Smiles brand is healthy and has a lot to go, but still taking in ancillary healthcare is more of a convenience exercise. So the patient will go to a shopping centre, not necessarily with Pacific Smiles top of mind, but then with our presence and our relevance on location, become a natural choice. So rather than investing a lot in building a brand, we're building an identity and a proximity and a consistency. And so if that's for a health fund or for Pacific Smiles, we're super relaxed about that.
I mean, I didn't know that the NIB that I was going to was run by you guys, but good to know. So Phil, you've been going from building a network of consumer electronic stores, being Apple, to now building out a network of dental clinics. What did you learn from your time at Apple and from that, being the inaugural employee that applies to rolling out all these dental clinics across Australia?
I think the very first thing that you learn is that it takes more than just one. And although I might have had the privilege of being the leader in some environments, it is invariably the people that surround you that make the difference. So the biggest learning was that, it's often said, but culture eats strategy for breakfast. And fundamentally, if you can galvanize the human beings that operate with you or visit you or choose to put their services with you towards a common purpose, then you've got a good start. And so my underlying learning would be not so much that it's all about the people, but if you can galvanize people and to understand what their contribution looks like and to know when they've done a good job, then there's almost nothing you can't achieve.
We want to unpack the people and culture aspect a little bit more, but before we get there, Pacific Smiles is in this growth phase, and the numbers bear that out. The top line revenue has almost doubled in the past 5 years, and you're reinvesting a lot of that money into growth, so it's not trickling, it's not coming down to the bottom line. How do you think about that trade-off between growing the profit number and then reinvesting to really grow the business?
Pacific Smiles' trajectory is significant. So a 2.5% market share in a $10 billion industry, working with 650 service and facilities agreement dentists today in a 17,500 dentist base, says that the only way is up. So we've taken the opportunity really since listing to sensibly drive the growth of the business, now very clear on our shopping centre strategy. And so while we could stop the rollout and expand margins and flow through to the bottom line, we believe that this is a long tail and a great story. So we do provide good returns. We do have sensible and healthy EBITDA flowing through. But right now, in a very fragmented market, we feel that putting new centres on the ground is the right thing to do.
When you think of growth companies these days, you think of tech. You wouldn't think of dentists. Is it hard to convince, the market and retail investors like us that you should think about a dentist clinic as a growth story?
I think it's the numbers that add up when you hear things like 10 billion and 17,500 and 650 and only having 110 centres. And then you take into account the nature of the relationships and perhaps some broader understanding where health services will go in Australia and with the health funds, it becomes somewhat of a compelling story. And we're very clear that we have to keep it simple. The moment we try and be excessively entrepreneurial or cleverer than we really should be, we make mistakes. So being very clear is vital.
So as an investor, it sounds 2.5% market share, and then the rest is just higgledy-piggledy mums and dads.
They're your words, not yours.
And a lot of other health centres. So really it just feels like for you guys, it's just a sales game and a conversion game of going to dentists and convincing them that your offer is the one to go for. As an investor, I'd like to know how quickly you think you can achieve that, and what are you doing to actually convince dentists to come on board, and where does that 2.5% turn to 5, turn to 10?
Sure. There are some other sophisticated players out there, and some of the private practices are exceptional. A number of colleagues in the industry are, they're really working hard to make this happen. So for us, the simple examples, we have had a great couple of years with rolling centres out successfully, moving to profitability in a good timeline, so inside of 12 months, which has given us support from the market and from the board to accelerate that rollout of new centres to somewhere between 20 to 25 per annum. So that's at the average cost of a new dental centre being around about $850,000. That's considerable support to roll out demonstratively in the market. We've got great relationships with landlords. We take a lease typically over 10 years. We depreciate over 7, and we get a cost of capital payback in 5. So we're looking at this as part of our longer term play to really take an opportunity right now. When does 2.5% become 5 in terms of market share? Look, I'd like to suggest within the next 5 years. We put 25 centres on the ground this coming year ahead, FY22. Maybe we get it all right, and then we get the opportunity to do it again, and then we're at 150 dental centres, to say a number. That is steps in very much the right direction to meet our growth ambitions. So nice. It's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it is exciting. Phil, we want to turn to people and culture, but before we do, we're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. So Phil, you mentioned before about the importance of the team, and you said culture eats strategy all the time, which is a saying that I like. Might steal that from you.
Culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Is that what you, yeah.
Maybe Peter Drucker did that. I'm not 100% sure.
No. You said it. And let's start at the top with you. Do you have a leadership philosophy as CEO?
Yeah, and it's learned, right? I don't think anything comes always from within. I think invariably it's learned or experienced. So I would say that the role of the leader is to lead, develop, inspire, and enable. Those 4 fundamental pieces are important. Within Pacific Smiles, we actually used a book called Legacy, which was written by, I think, a guy called James Kerr about being embedded with the All Blacks. And some of the fundamental learnings, and he's got 5 principles, which you can have a look for yourselves. But essentially, some of those fundamentals around how we operate as leaders and people within the business became a real methodology for me from the beginning. Then over time, the team actually developed their own identity. So we have 3 key cornerstones. So it's we must play to win. And that starts because we're unified and we're adapting to whatever the circumstances. And so we minted, would you believe, a series of medals around those 3 play to win, unify, and adapt. And various people pass them out in the business when they catch someone doing something right, something amazing. So they become a transferable token, if you will, that are just highlighted on catching people doing the right thing. We've added to that. So leaders have added to it with another little token, and this is all around execution, because in order for us to grow at the rate that we want to and the way that we want to, we have to execute with excellence. So there's just that subtlety of how we behave and then how we do what we said we'd do that's fundamental to our success.
You can't say transferable token on a podcast without me thinking NFTs.
Yeah.
Maybe you should put them on the blockchain and then you can pass them between employees that way.
Out of my depth is
I mean, outside of those medals, how do you think about actually building like a high-performing team or company culture? You know, I guess back at your time at Apple, you would have had to have built a team up.
Yeah.
How did you go through that process?
It's visible leadership. So it's being present. I spent a hell of a lot of time on the road. So during the middle of COVID last year, me and a number of executives, we hit the road. We couldn't fly anywhere. So we jumped in cars, and I don't know, at one stage I did 5,000 Ks driving from Newcastle to Victoria and around all the centres just to say hello. So I couldn't spend a lot of time in there. You go in and you'd wave and you'd say thank you for all that you're doing, because they hadn't seen people for weeks. And so various executives, we all did the same thing. You know, we travelled to Queensland, we travelled to the ACT, just to be visible leaders. And I think whether it's through a difficult period like COVID or whether it's through growth, leading from the floor is better than leading from behind a desk. So that's, I think, just a really simple aspect of how we're trying to do it effectively.
You mentioned COVID there. Managing a team through COVID would have been probably one of the biggest challenges of your career. I'm going to hazard a guess. What was COVID like? Both for Pacific Smiles, but then also for the culture of your business, and like how did you manage the people through that time?
What did Muhammad Ali or someone say? Everybody's got a plan till you get punched in the face. Man, at one point there, we stood down 1,200 staff over Zoom.
Wow.
With
group call.
Yeah. With
tough to do individual calls.
Oh man, I tell you, the support people and my HR team behind the scenes that rallied to make that something that was even possible before we knew about JobKeeper. And then the sheer administration of human emotion, human needs, and flow-on impact to the dentist, to the staff, and to the patients is something I've never seen before. So I would suggest that everybody put their heart and soul into looking after people, and then, you know, quite delightfully, if it's even something to call delightful, we came out of the lockdown period and the business rose. So patients returned, dentists returned, staff returned, and for the last 12 months, we've had a very positive period of attendance of patients. The business has grown demonstrably, and the capability is extended because people have been through the very worst of times. So they're now set to do some of their best work as we grow the business. So it's quite special.
I'm always interested to, hear from leaders about how they think about what happened with the pandemic and how they have perhaps changed business strategy going forward. Like, yes, of course, it was a shock that only comes once every blue moon. But have you actually made any changes within the business to prevent the shock that happened to the business? What have been some of the major takeaways from that you've made?
We learned a lot in the early stages. We were trying to control things. We couldn't control anything other than our response as a business. The first thing we learned very quickly that we had to do was upweight our communication to dentists, patients, and staff, because we thought that just saying something meant that everybody knew. But it took 25 times of repetition, and everybody saying the same thing before it started to get in. And so that communication, decentralizing decision-making so that people were empowered in, remote locations, not remote, but spread out across the eastern seaboard, weren't waiting to be told. We gave them a framework for decision-making. We gave them parameters to make mistakes. And then we were listening very hard and using all the technology that we could muster, daily Zoom calls, multiple daily leadership calls. So simplifying, increasing communication, decentralizing control, and extending trust. And we made some mistakes, but everybody grew. And I would suggest that's something we're carrying going forward.
Listening to you talk and, the question about business strategy, it comes back to people. It's no surprise that TDM, who are known for loving, people and culture and really focusing on that, are big fans of you. It's pretty great to hear how people focused you are. When you think about, you were in the States, maybe has a reputation for not being as people focused a country as, some of the European and Australian companies. What do you think they get wrong, or what would you say to some of your other business leaders out there? Like, what do you think they should do better?
It's not a competition. If you can engender the confidence in the people that you're working with, that they can be better, all shall rise. If you take accountability for trying to make someone better or drive the business or drive the behaviours, it only has the lifespan of what you can produce. But if you can encourage someone that their potential is up to them and then facilitate that being improved, then the potential is unlimited. Because what happens is it ceases to be a competition, it ceases to be one-upmanship and actually becomes a thing of pride. And that's really the number one thing that flows through our centres in Pacific Smiles, is a sense of pride for these many, many people that are working with us about the centre, about the business, about the work we do. And so I would say enable people's potential, and you're off to a good start.
Very hard thing to do, I think, is to actually. It's easy to say, but then I think it just takes years of experience to know, because everyone's different, right? And so knowing how you can extract the best out of everyone, despite everyone being completely different, very difficult. Yeah. I'm trying to get the best out of Ren.
You're a lot more of a driver, though. So, Phil, we could talk people and culture all day, but would love to hear about how you think about Pacific Smiles' future. So we'll start short term and then we'll start thinking more long term. So if you think about the next 12 months for your business, what does the next year hold for Pacific Smiles?
We've got a board endorsed, very clear, laid out plan to put 20 to 25 brand new dental centres on the ground for Pacific Smiles. We'll do a number of new centres for HBF Dental, and we'll continue to build the relationships with the health funds. So everybody is clear on that. Everybody understands what their role is, and we'll continue to engage with everybody in terms of what they need to execute with excellence. And it will be that simple. We're not going to try and do anything super clever. We're just going to be really clever about executing on our plan.
We always need to know, though, what is as an investor, the biggest risk that you see for your business right now?
Twofold. One would be the complacency or the comfort that comes with mild success. So we've been mildly successful over the 12 months, if I'm trying to be polite.
Share price is what, almost doubled?
Yeah. but
Good to know that that's mild success.
Yeah.
Well, what happens is you start to overbelieve. And I think you've always got to be consciously uncomfortable and pushing each other for, is this really as good as we could have done it? So the complacency is something that keeps me current on what's going on. And then making sure that we build a natural break point. So I say 20 to 25 centres, but if we're not delivering what we should at 10, then we'll slow down. So not backing yourself to deliver or bust. There's got to be a sensible cadence and a logical set of reflective points, so you can say, do you know what? We're not where we said we'd be, but we're in control. Therefore we'll adjust. And that ability to course correct brings confidence in the market, bring confidence in the team, and ultimately sets us up for longevity, I think.
Can it go the other way, though? You hit 25 in half the time and you're like, let's double down?
Well, listen, I know a number of our shareholders are absolutely of the belief that we should batten down the hatches and go for it. I think it comes down to being really measured and sensible, because we are a healthcare service provider. So yes, it could, but moreover, I would probably keep my powder dry to continue doing a jolly good job, the right cadence. Yeah.
Long term. Love that.
Under promise, over deliver.
Yeah. So speaking of long term, if you think about Pacific Smiles in 10, 15 years from now, what does success look like?
Success looks like a great reputation for having exceptional service and facilities for maybe more than just dental professionals. At the end of the day, we operate over 100 dental centres today, but are essentially a service and facility provider inside shopping centres. So being able to have great relationships with health funds, being trusted by the public, and fundamentally having the respect of the dentists and respect for dentists should see us on a very bright future and hopefully separate us from everyone else.
Inside scoop.
Yeah, I mean, I got to follow up on that. The whole beyond dentistry, are you going to
Bakeries.
adjacent move to GPs? Is that in the product pipeline?
No, I think we want to stay in the lane that we're in. But if you think about a surgery today that has a chair in it, we have a high degree of infection control. We're a very sanitised and clean facility. We could be offering vaccinations, inoculations. And if you think about health funds' desire to drive in the wellness space, there's very much an opportunity to do nutrition consulting, other professionals, not us. We could do blood works, pathology. There's all sorts of things that are service orientated for professionals that they need rooms and an opportunity to practice from. So there's a long runway here.
Yeah, now
You watch this rent's going to finish and you're like, I'm going to go and invest more money.
But to be super clear, dental's the primary focus, but it's delightful to know that we could, should we choose, to have other strings to our bow.
Yeah.
Is there any other major competitors following the shopping centre strategy?
There are a couple of others that are inside, usually smaller and not with as many as us. It's not something that we've got a caveat on, but we're very clear about how we do it and when we do it and where we do it. And the relationship with the landlords and the trust that we've built with the dentist is the cornerstone of that. So the barrier to entry is certainly cost and the complexity, but I'm sure that some people will consider following us in at some point.
Yeah, well, now that people are listening to this episode, you better accelerate the rollout plan.
Exactly.
Well, Phil, it's always a pleasure chatting to CEOs and executives to understand their journey and how they think about their business. One of the biggest challenges for retail investors is actually getting insight into how management think about the businesses that they're running. So having you on the show has been a great pleasure, and I'm sure many people in our audience have taken a lot of value from it. So thank you very much for your time. For those listening along at home, a reminder that it's Pacific Smiles Group, ASX ticker PSQ. Full disclosure, Ren is a shareholder, and we'll leave it there. It's been an absolute pleasure, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Phil.
All the best.
Equity Mates Investing Podcast is a product of Equity Mates Media. All information in this podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for professional finance, legal, or tax advice. The hosts of Equity Mates Investing Podcast are not financial professionals and are not aware of your personal financial circumstances. Before making any financial decisions, you should read the product disclosure statement and, if necessary, consult a licensed financial professional. Do not take financial advice from a podcast. For more information, head to the disclaimer page on the Equity Mates website, where you can find ASIC resources and find a registered financial professional near you. In the spirit of reconciliation, Equity Mates Media and the hosts of Equity Mates Investing Podcast acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today.